Hello, everybody. Okay, so this is the first podcast of a couple that I'm going to post. Just trying to go over the chapter 6 that we started before our big long break. I just want to start off by saying I hope everyone is okay. And I know that this isn't the most ideal way to be doing class, but this is what we've got to work with. And I don't want to inundate any of you with just a ton of work and new video conferencing and having to be in class at a certain time. I really wanted to just streamline it and make it easy for you guys because I know that everybody is dealing with a lot right now. So I'm going to just walk you through certain slides. I'm not going to cover every single slide. But I'm going to kind of go over ones where I know there's some big concepts I want you to get. It is going to require that you do some reading on your own through the chapters, and this is pretty much how we're going to do it for the remainder of the semester. If at any time you aren't comfortable with the material or you need more help, please feel free to email me and we can chat. We could even set up a video chat if you prefer. Whatever works for you, I'm willing to do. But this will at least give you a good overview of different concepts that you should be zoning in on. And then my goal is to make the tests a little easier. I'm sure you're going to like that. But just maybe even quizzes, short quizzes for each chapter or every other chapter. I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like yet, but this will help you get the material that you need to get, okay? So we left off last time just starting to look at the video by Jane Elliott, where she did the study on brown eyes, blue eyes, and kind of divided the class by eye color. So it was called A Class Divided. And the goal here was to show how a lot of prejudice is learned, that we learn it from our social cues and we learn it from our environment and the models that we follow after. And so I really want you to watch the videos. They are posted on the main page for week 10. And so you'll just have those links there and you can watch those and see what happened and kind of thinking about what you're reading in the chapter in chapter 6 and how does it relate to the understanding of how prejudice forms and how prejudice is learned. And it'll help give you some good context there. So those videos are posted for you. The hate groups currently running in the United States, it's a little bit old data, 2009 data, I believe, so a little bit of a decade old. I'm sure it's a lot different now, but this was reported by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and it showed 932 active hate groups. Although most of these groups restrict their activities to posting hateful messages via websites, that's how we see most of the activity, some are actively promoting violence against immigrants or other ethnic minorities, creating a climate of fear among vulnerable communities especially. So it just shows that prejudice can lead to devastating consequences, such as ones that we've seen in the past, like the Holocaust and such. Okay. Two things I really want you guys to understand throughout this is just the difference between prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice literally means prejudgment. So it is a mixture of some of the things we've already talked about, the stereotypes that exist and the beliefs that we have towards others, emotions that get kind of imprinted on all that, like hostility and envy and fear are the primary driving emotions. As well as what are our predispositions to action. So action is the actual discrimination. So usually an unjustifiable negative attitude towards a group of people is the prejudice, and then an unjustifiable and negative behavior towards a group and its members is the discrimination. So we could believe that obese people are gluttonous, feel dislike for an obese person. Those would be ways of prejudice, But then when we hesitate to hire or date an obese person, that would be more of the discrimination, the action. So prejudice is dynamic and it's changing over time, and definitely current events influence people's thinking, and that changes as we go to war with different countries, as political events happen. This can change our mindset towards how we think about people in a prejudiced manner. We think of things like September 11th or the O.J. Simpson trial or the Rodney King beating and subsequent trial and riots that occurred. These are just some of the last ones that have occurred in the past 20-ish years that we've seen happening. So definitely there's events that can spike racial prejudice or ethnic prejudice and change that. And so we want to be aware of looking at this and understanding how this can be affected. Okay. And I just want to say, if you hear noise in the background, I'm sorry. I've got 6 people in my house right now. So it's a little challenging to find quiet space to record these podcasts. So you'll have to roll with it. Okay, so prejudice and discrimination. Discrimination takes on many faces. So I call it the isms of discrimination, and we're going to take a look at racism, sexism, heterosexism, and just to name a few. And I posted this video on the Week 10 site, so you can check it out. It has to do with homophobia and just how the media can influence our beliefs. A simple commercial done by Snickers really sparked a lot of anger and hostility. Remember those emotions that are kind of the underpinnings of prejudice? In individuals who saw them as promoting a brand in a very homophobic way. And so definitely media plays a strong role in how messages get delivered. So check out the commercial and try to discern what the underlying message is. Definitely Snickers is showing Mr. T as a prototype for masculinity, or you could say a stereotype of masculinity. And so that definitely doesn't help, okay? But what we talk about with isms is, racism is the discrimination directed at a specific racial group. Sexism is directed at a specific gender. Heterosexism is discrimination at non-heterosexual individuals. Okay, we're going to skip the little logic puzzle. When we talk about sexism, there's different types, gender prejudice and gender stereotypes. Gender prejudice is where we're treating people unequally due to their gender. The book refers to it as gender prejudice. I really feel like it's more adequately would be named gender discrimination. But nonetheless, it's differential treatment. And gender stereotypes are sort of the underlying nature of that. People's ideas about how men and women should behave. We all have different ideas about what the role of a woman is or what the role of a man is. These change across culture, and they change cross-culturally in different cultures, even just within a culture. So they're based on socially and culturally defined beliefs of what it means to be male or female. And they can be formed very early in life. And just thinking about what messages children get about being a boy or being a girl, or girl activities or boy activities, quote unquote, and how this can play a role in what becomes sexism. Ads like this perpetuate gender stereotypes, especially that men are dominant and females are submissive, not to mention stereotypes of women being sex objects. I don't know how you guys feel about viewing these graphic images, but these are the kinds of images that increase males' tolerance to the objectification of women. Even if women start to see this as being the norm or as being what's quote unquote considered status quo for females in this culture. So you can take a look at that and try to think of how this perpetuates existing stereotypes in the gender roles that we look at. Sexism isn't an American phenomenon. Many cultures place very different values around and on the expectations that we have for men and women. Hostile sexism is feeling resentful and openly derogatory towards the abilities of women, whereas benevolent sexism is kind of like what we enjoy, men behaving in ways that appear chivalrous, but can also at the same time communicate to negative female stereotypes. So, it depends on the expectations of the culture, how we're going to see these played out. But we see this very different in all different cultures. Some cultures, there's still a lot of machismo, right? The male macho kind of role. And other cultures, not so much. Those that are changing in terms of the roles are seeing a big decrease in sexism, and definitely America can fall into that category where we've seen decreases. On one hand, we see a lot of decrease in hostile sexism, but we may be seeing more increase in benevolent sexism. Okay. We also see a difference between what's considered old-fashioned sexism and modern sexism. Old-fashioned is more of the in-your-face type of sexism, very overt and being based on the belief that women are less competent. Will the dealer charge a woman more for her car because of her race or her gender, because he thinks she doesn't know what she's doing or buying or agreeing to? According to the research, Black women pay up to 8% more for a new vehicle than white males. So we are seeing this a little bit more, and this is considered modern sexism. It's covert, it's subtle. It might be typified by resisting policies that support women, like family leave and postpartum leave when a woman has to stay home with her baby, and policies that don't support that. The workforce might say, oh, sure, you can have a child and that's great and all, but we're not going to support you. You're not going to pay you for that leave, or your leave may be very brief. Some denial exists around sexism, saying that it doesn't exist anymore, and that the overt antagonism towards women has waned. We're seeing women as spokespeople in the sports world, ESPN. That doesn't mean that just because those are the faces you're now seeing in those types of roles, that those women aren't experiencing really sexism, whether it be modern or old-fashioned. They may be, subjects of certain comments or things that are derogatory on a daily basis due to some of the sexism that still exists. So when a woman in particular has a hard time rising to the top in an occupation, we call this the glass ceiling effect. It's sort of like a gender-based barrier that really prevents women, I should say, from rising to those high-level manager positions. And it relies on a stereotype of women and typical female behavior, that women are nurturing and kind and soft and not aggressive and proactive. And, when a woman is assertive, she gets a bad rap. And when a man is assertive, he's taken seriously. Glass cliff is actually putting a woman in a spot of power and then waiting for her to fail. Okay, so we're going to stop there for this podcast. I will do one more, and then we will be done with chapter 6.